What is the best pricing strategy for your Airbnb listing? You've probably asked this question, and we're going to address that with John On here on the Fearless Investor Podcast. Hey, Team Fearless, I just want to take a quick break from this podcast to talk about funding your furnishings. If you're listening to the Fearless Investor Podcast, then you probably want to do the Airbnb arbitrage model. Reason being, it's a low barrier of entry, right? $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 to buy furniture with someone else's property. And sure, you can use your own bank account or you can raise the money at a low interest rate from a friend or family member. But wouldn't you rather get that money at 0% interest, aka free money? That's what my friends at Pathway Financial can do for you. Pathway Financial helps people like you get 0% interest credit cards so you don't have to have the financial stress of putting down a ton of money up front for your deals. Think about that for a second. How many arbitrage deals could you do if money was not a concern? Well, that could be the exact possibility with Pathway Financial's help. Get a free quote from them today. Go to fearlesskyle.com/pathway financial to find out how much you can get pre-approved for right now. And don't worry, it won't have any impact on your credit score because it's a soft inquiry. So go once again to fearlesskyle.com/pathway financial and get that free quote. Hey guys, welcome in. And we did this interview, as always, live in our six-figure formula. Stayed on for a little bit longer afterward to answer questions from our members. So if you haven't checked that out yet, make sure you do. fearlesskyle.com/6FF. Now, those of you out there, Team Fearless, I'm really excited for this topic today because it's one that I get asked all the time from students, from people in Airbnb Masterminds, our free Facebook group, to DMs on Instagram. What is your pricing strategy? And you'll hear my answer to that during this interview with John, but John is the real expert here about pricing and revenue management. This guy was able to get over $200,000 per year on his 2-bedroom, 2 baths in Hawaii. Compared to the competition, he's blowing them out of the water, and he does it with data, with facts, with all of the key indicators that you need to, not just going off of a gut feeling of what should I price it with. And he goes beyond just AirDNA and beyond Price Labs, and he's going to tell you a little bit about how he does it and how he can do it for you too. John is with TechTape. He started TechTape a little bit ago as another way to just add more value to other hosts out there in the industry. And he's going to show you how you can join TechTape or even just get more information on it with no stress, no pressure by the end of this call. So make sure you stick around to the end to find out what that's all about and how you can join TechTape or just get a free call from TechTape and get more information. And that's going to also be in the show notes for the podcast and then YouTube description down below. You can go ahead and set up a call right away. But let's get to it right now with John On here on the Fearless Investor YouTube channel. All right, guys, really excited to be live here in the six-figure formula group with John On. We had Richie on yesterday. And for those of you that are listening on the podcast or watching on YouTube on recording, you need to jump into the six-figure formula because we've got people like John, like Richie from Price Labs coming in and giving amazing value. And you get the chance to also ask questions and participate in all of these recordings. So John, just excited to have you on here and ready to talk and geek out a little bit more on pricing strategies today, man. Thanks for being on.
Well, thanks for having me on, Kyle. I've always respected what you would do for the community, and so I'm excited to be able to share what I have to share with everyone here.
Hey, right back at you, man. And I know we connected on Clubhouse back in the day when we had nothing else to do except for sit at home and wait for COVID to pass by us. But what I've come to know about you is that you are extremely good at revenue management, but you also have a portfolio of your own. So I know you've got some experience with short-term rentals. What's your craziest short-term rental story that you've got for us?
No, craziest short-term rental story. I think the craziest short-term rental story is my first Booking.com booking ended up being an orgy at one of my properties. I hope you could bleep this out, but that was not okay. A good start. But
I don't think any kids are on here trying to build an Airbnb business, so I think you're good.
Yeah, but I will say the craziest real estate investing thing was I had to have 5 transactions all happen within sequence within a 2-week period when I first started my my investing business. That was about 10 years ago. And I was like, if I can make this work, I can make anything else work.
Yeah, seriously, 5 transactions in 2 weeks. That's That's crazy. Most people won't do that in a lifetime, and you're doing it in 2 weeks. Good for you, man. All right, cool. Well, I mean, let's, before we start talking pricing strategies and everything, let's kind of back it up and go back to what you were doing before short-term rentals. Give me kind of your journey into this industry.
It's kind of a zigzag all across. This is like my sixth career right now. So
I'm
I
with you.
started out as an architect by training.
Okay.
And then I worked as an architect. Then I decided I wanted to go into sustainability consulting within the architecture world. And to do that, I actually went back to college or to grad school. And there I got a master's and a doctorate. So that was another
Wow.
career. That was about a 6-year stint. And then I practiced as a sustainability consultant. While I was doing that, I saw some amazing developers. So I said, when I grow up, I want to be a developer. And then so after my sustainability, I actually stopped my 9 to 5 and started developing houses, ground up new construction
Wow.
houses. And when you're developing houses, it's always cash out, not cash in. And so on a vacation to Hawaii is when I heard that short-term rentals generated some positive cash flow. And I started with one property, and so I built a short-term rental business out in Hawaii, living in New Jersey. Um, and through that, I started recognizing that I was really good with the revenue management. I was bringing
Mm.
in 200,000 plus gross revenue per 2 bedroom, 2 bath condo that I owned and
Wow.
managed.
Wow.
And people started asking me to do that. And so that's where my technology and revenue management business started from. So now I'm in my sixth career, hopefully my last, but you never know.
Well, and just talking about the idea of development and especially construction, like those are big time businesses that come with a lot of stress. It's funny
Yes.
to me whenever people are like, "Hey, I'm worried about starting an Airbnb arbitrage, and what if I spend $15,000 and it doesn't work?" I'm like, "Well, guess what? Then you've made probably the smallest mistake in starting a new business than any business out there." So, can you just talk really quickly about like all of the stress and risks that came with those past businesses versus short-term rentals?
Yeah. I mean, being an architect, I really enjoyed the development process. I loved, buying that property, envisioning what it could be, highest and best value, designing and everything. So I still enjoyed it. But I mean, talk about stress.
Mm.
Everything from the town taking like 6 months to approve permits, right? And so you have carrying costs. They're supposed to do it in like a month legally, but they just take their sweet time.
Yep.
Prices of materials and labor go up during construction,
Yep.
so your budget is blown that way. You have inspections, along the line, and if you fail inspections, there's another 2 to 3 weeks that you've lost. And so there's just a lot of variables that take time, and that's why I think most people say real estate is a very slow and steady business, and it
Yeah.
is, right? And most real estate areas are very tech slow, right? Very averse to adopting tech. Short-term rentals, on the other hand, moves very quickly. And like you said,
Mhm.
$15,000. I mean, that's I could spend $15,000 in a day going to buying plumbing fixtures
Yeah.
for a house, right? So yeah, I mean, the risk was immense, and I would say as COVID was hitting,
Yeah.
I was panicked. I mean, in hindsight, I wish I hadn't sold before COVID, right?
Mm.
But at that time when that was coming, I was like, I have to get this sold because once COVID hits,
Yeah.
it's gonna, so
Well, you're giving me more confidence for a decision I made a few months back to sell a lot that had been sitting for a year because permits were just taking forever with the city. So I got in and out of that and made a nice profit without having to go through the stress of new construction. But let me ask you, with deciding like, hey, short-term rental seems like a really good way to at least get the cash coming in. Did you go the arbitrage route? Did you still buy the properties? Were you managing and co-hosting? How did you get in and see that the cash flow start to come in?
yeah. So my fundamental thesis was I want to build out a system so every year I could buy one property and slot it in, and not get to a point where um, I'm like, oh my God, this is a great opportunity, but I'm overloaded.
Mm.
My team can't handle it. So everything was about buying, owning, and operating.
Okay.
And I was on track, 3 years, three properties, and we still own it and we still run it. But COVID definitely, that kind of changed the trajectory, and I
Mm.
stopped purchasing, during COVID. And ever since, I've actually stopped purchasing properties and I've started co-hosting and helping other managers or other owners in Hawaii with the full gamut of what they need
Yeah.
to, run their business or be profitable actually.
So, I always hear about, and I know this is going to be a little bit off topic, but I got to ask with Hawaii, there's lots of regulations and it seems to depend on which island you're on. Um,
Yep.
and there's a lot of regulations anywhere in the world, right? But still you look at it and you see like thousands of listings on Airbnb. Is that just a bunch of people doing it illegally, or are they grandfathered in? Like how are you able, or what are you seeing about the competition, especially in a highly regulated area like Hawaii?
Yeah. So a couple factors. One, when I was getting in, and this was about 8 years ago now, and this is when New York City, if you remember, was just starting to crack down on Airbnbs
Hmm.
way back then. And me being an architect, my wife being a lawyer, we did our zoning research, and we only do it in the legal areas. So
Okay.
our business is actually somewhat helped by the regulations now.
Cool.
You're still seeing a lot of listings. Some probably are operating illegally, but the other aspect is Hawaii implements these regulations that they have no way of enforcing.
Mm,
And so there's a lot of, it's not that people are doing it illegally, but like there are some regulations that are uh, there's an injunction, so the city can't do anything about it, right?
sure.
So it's a lot of gray area in Hawaii, and I think that's what I will say to keep this short and sweet.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I am part of the leadership of the advocacy groups, both
Yeah.
on Oahu and I created a state level organization so that we can get fair and kind of we could be part of that discussion. And
Well, I think too, one of the things that you said that I'm always encouraging people to do is if you do it kosher and you do it, above board, then when regulations do start to come down that are a little bit more strict, then you're typically going to be the one that's protected because you've done it the right way from the get go. So I like regulations. I'm in a market right now that doesn't have regulations, and I'm like, you need to kick out 50% of these people over here because we've got a lot of saturation over here, and I'm trying my best to try to look at just how in the world is the city going to get people out. So outside of that, though, John, the reason that we're here is because you're really good at revenue management, and we are always talking with Richie from Price Labs, and we're always talking about. A lot of my students are just always like, "Am I doing the right thing? Am I pricing the right way?" And you seem to have kind of figured out a really good formula. So have you always been a numbers person? Like what was it that about revenue management that you started to just get this niche and run with it?
um, I'm definitely an analytical guy,
Cool.
but I'm not a data nerd, right? I'm not one that like tries to stream in all the data, but I'm very picky about the kind of data that I use. And I have a thesis about what data is useful and what data is not. I think that's one of the differentiators that we bring to the table. Um, so when I started when I had my first property, I spent a lot of time on revenue management. And I think one of the benefits was because I owned, I could experiment. I tried this, I tried that, I tried a lot
Yeah.
of different things because at the end of the day, I just had to answer to myself.
Mm.
And so I had years of, one, two, three properties that was just my own. And, people would always say, well, if you're, 85 to 90% occupied, that means you're pricing too low. Meanwhile, my 2 bedroom, 2 bath condos are bringing in 200,000 K gross.
Yeah.
And I'm like, am I pricing too low? I'm like, how can that be? Right.
Yeah.
And then through these iterations, I came to understand it's how you get to that 100%. You can be getting to 100% occupancy and absolutely killing it, or you could be getting to 100% occupancy and leaving 30, 40, 50% on the table. And that's where I started, kind of developing strategies on how, what's the strategy that you implement to maximize, optimize your revenue based on your risk profile.
I could not agree more. I think there's rules and exceptions to everything. I think the rule is if you're at 100% occupancy, you're leaving money on the table. But the exception is if you know what you're doing and you're getting top level prices and you're still able to fill those gaps to get to 100%,
Right.
then you're killing it. Right. So, I know we're also going to talk about how you help people and how you do this for people, but give us just a few tips of like if I'm I see one of our students, Dan, is in here. Dan is always asking about what's the best pricing strategy and how can I make sure that I'm pricing the right way. Just a few tips of like what you do that's
Mhm.
different than other people. I don't want to hear the same like make sure your listing is good and make sure that you've got your your minimum night stay set. Like give me some of the juicy stuff that you do that's different than other people.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, I'm the last guy who will talk about listing, right? So, what I'm doing is whatever that unique property listing that you have online, because that's what people are buying. They're not buying the stay, they're
Mhm.
buying the picture, the ratings, and all that. Whatever you have online, what TechTape is finding is what the market will bear, what people, guests who are traveling, are willing to pay, as opposed to I have a hot tub, so I should add $20 a night. I have a 5-star rating, so I should add $5. Like, I don't care
Mm.
what that actual physical property is. We are finding what is that market fair market value of the property that guests are booking, as opposed to what are my competitors doing. And
Mm.
that's a
Interesting.
it's a fundamental. It's very similar, but it's a mind shift in thinking how you approach revenue management.
Well, yeah, 100% because I'm doing the way where I'm looking at competitors and I'm saying like, okay, if I got a 3 bedroom, 2 bath without a hot tub or without a pool, then if I do get a pool or get a hot tub, then what are my competitors pricing for that? And is it worth the ROI? But what you're saying is no matter if it's a 3 bedroom, 2 bath that looks like it's from the 90s or a 3 bedroom, 2 bath that looks like it's newly renovated, has the hot tub, has all the great amenities, you're going to price it the same way, or you're going to price it based on the condition of the home, not compared to condition of other properties?
I'm gonna price it based on. It's very simple. Occupancy is the ultimate KPI or indicator to seeing
Okay.
what the market will bear, right? So, very simple example. Some people are like, "Oh my god, I'm 100% booked for the summer," and they think they're killing it, and that's when you're leaving money on the table.
Mhm.
So we have kind of based on our clients' strategy, like a target occupancy based on how far out it is and what your market is. And in very simplistic terms, if you're ahead of that occupancy, it probably means you're priced too low. If you're behind it, you're probably priced too high. And so we're calibrating it. And so to your example, if you have a 3 bedroom, property with pool, but one is updated, one is not, the market will tell you that the one that's updated is worth more.
Mhm.
And we will find out what the people who are booking are valuing that, as opposed to saying, since my
Mm.
neighbor has a pool,
Got
my
it.
property, and start chasing what other people are doing. And I see time and again, especially in a market that's slowing down, where people are like, well, my neighbor's doing this. Okay, I've discounted the price by 10% and I'm still empty. It doesn't matter because the market is saying at this point in time that 10% discount is not substantial enough. On the flip
Mm.
side, when there's a compression, when there's a high demand, I mean, last 2 years, a lot of people thought they were killing it because they were 20% higher than what they were the year before. multiple of my clients were 90% higher than the 90th percentile of the market, right?
Wow.
Because it's like riding a wave. You keep finding what the market will bear, and then at a certain point, you will see, okay, we've crested. So I know it sounds very simplistic, and it takes system and process and everything to continue to do that, but it's like driving, right? You have your hands on the wheel, eyes on the road, then it's like little adjustments
Yeah.
constantly, and it's easy. But if you don't have your hands on the wheel, you have to like swerve to try to not hit something.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what we are. We're the drivers. And Price Labs or Wheelhouse is like the Formula One car. And you need the driver and the car to win the Grand Prix.
So when you're talking about getting the market value, is TechTape using a combination of Price Labs and Wheelhouse and AirDNA to go figure out what that number is, or are you what technologies are you using?
So we are tech agnostic. So with some clients, we use Price for the revenue side. We
Right.
use Price Labs. For some other clients, we use Wheelhouse. We also incorporate it may be AirDNA, it may be key data, but the fundamental approach is if you can make data say whatever you want, right? You churn it enough and you can make data say whatever you want. So what we do is we like to take the data of multiple sources, and if they point in the same trend, then we know that should be kind of an accurate direction. If they diverge, then it means that we need to look a little further into, okay, is this market heating up, slowing down, what not? So
Yeah.
we're big on kind of triangulating amongst multiple data sources as opposed to being pegged to one data source and trying to make all decisions based on that.
So what are some of those KPIs, key performance indicators that you're looking for when you go on to these multiple platforms? Is it just revenue and occupancy? Is it trends of the market for what they were compared to 21 and 22? Or like what are some of those things that help you to be able to say, okay, I've looked at 3 different technologies. They all are pointing in an upward trend, so we're going for it.
Yep. So I said occupancy before and pacing report. Those are the two things that I'm looking at because those indicate trends that are happening, right?
And the
Pacing
pacing report is
is how quickly your people are booking, right? And it could be your property or within the market, how fast, when properties are getting booked, right?
mhm,
So again, if you're behind pace, you're probably priced a little bit too high. If you're ahead of pace, you're probably pricing a little too low. Again, these are not absolutes, and there's a lot
mhm.
of judgment calls that go in, but those are what I'm looking at to look out.
Okay.
You of course have to look, year over year, quarter over quarter, last month to this month as a business, but looking at past performance to predict future performance is like driving forward by looking in the rearview mirror,
Right.
right? And so I use that kind of data to benchmark after the fact to see how did we perform, but I don't look at year over year to try to say, well, last year I charged 200, this year I'm going to charge 220. Like that, there's very little correlation, especially in short-term rentals, because so many economic factors, travel factors
100%.
shift things.
100%. I mean, we have a
I hope I'm
property.
not like, disrupting everything, but like that's not disrupting, but like, being
No.
contentious about everything. But that's what has worked for our system.
Yeah.
That's not to say that's the only way revenue management can be done, but that is the process that we're taking.
Yeah. Well, you said something too that I kind of have a theory that, all right, if the market is, for example, on average booking out 14 days ahead of time, then I want to be within about 15 to 20% of that number. And if I am, whether I'm on the good side or the bad side of that, right? If I'm only booking out, let's call it 12 days ahead of time, or only 16 or more than that and 16 days ahead of time in the future, I'm typically right around that. And as long as I'm getting around the same price, ideally a little bit of a higher price, then I know, hey, my properties are probably the best properties that people are booking. But then, like to me, if I'm getting only 10 days at a time and the market's getting 14, but I'm getting 30, 40% higher prices, I'm okay with that. So I think there's some give and take there too. And it can't just be like everything is cookie cutter and in the same box.
And that's exactly, there's a lot of SaaS out there, right? Let me say this. I hear a lot of people say, I tried Price Labs or I tried Wheelhouse, you get another chain, and it didn't work, right?
Yep. I was one of those.
It's not it didn't work. It's like you have to know how to
Yeah.
use those tools. And
Yep.
so I use a lot of analogies. I apologize, but it's kind of like someone going to Home Depot, buying the same exact hammer that the carpenter can buy, and coming home and saying, "I bought that hammer, and the house didn't build itself. It
Yeah.
doesn't work." Right?
It's not the tool, it's the carpenter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And anyone on this call can be the carpenter, but it takes a lot of time and
Yes.
process to do that. Because what you just said about 12 days out, 14 days out, 10 days out, and all that, what we're doing is essentially 10 days out, 1 month out, 3 months out, six. We're constantly monitoring that
Mhm.
entire timeline, and based on what you want out of your revenue performance, we're calibrating it so that it's tailored to
Mhm.
your strategy. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. It 100%. And here's like I'll give you my answer for this question, then I want to hear your answer. When people ask me what's the best pricing strategy or what's your pricing strategy, I'm just telling them, listen, I'm throwing a bunch of things at the wall on each property and seeing what sticks, and then I'm going with that strategy for that property. Like I don't have a well, if it's this size in this location, then it's this strategy. If it's this size and this, like no, I'm just saying, okay, I think this thing is gonna make $500 a night, but guess what? If it only makes $400 a night, I'm just gonna roll with that, and I'm gonna try to get as highly occupied at $400 a night as I possibly can. So what about you? I mean, when people ask you that question, what's your best pricing strategy or what pricing strategy are you using? How do you answer that question?
So the strategy shifts. Like, you don't pick a strategy and you do it.
Right?
It's like sports, right? Like, you can't just say, "Here's a game plan," and just execute that, right? You have to
Yeah.
adjust as the playing field,
Call some
conditions
audibles.
adjust, right?
Yeah.
So it shifts. But the other thing that I'll say is, if you go to buy a stock portfolio or something with a financial advisor, right? They ask you, what is your risk tolerance? What is
Mhm.
your, right?
Yeah.
And then based on that, they're able to recommend, if you're young, then more aggressive because you have more time to, recover. If you're near retirement, much more conservative. Short-term rentals is an investment.
Hmm.
Your investment thesis or your risk tolerance, I could probably make some people a lot more money, but they would lose sleep at night because they're not seeing what they're comfortable with. Then that's not the right strategy for you,
Mm.
right? I could also make someone a lot less money, but they're able to sleep at night. But it's still more than what they were making or that they needed. That is the right strategy for that individual.
I love that because and what I think the key there is when you're comfortable, you're really not doing as well as you can. Just like when we talk about you're comfortable, you're not growing. Is there a way for you to just kind of help some people that are listening right now? They're fearing the changing the strategy. They're like, but John, I am 90% booked for the next 60 days. And that makes me really happy because I don't have to worry about it. And they're hearing this and now they're saying, well, maybe I'm leaving money on the table. Maybe I need to increase my price, but I'm scared to do that. Anything that you can say to that person right now?
We could still get to that 90% booked, within the last 90 days or 30 days. But again, it doesn't just happen overnight, but it takes time to get to it. But we can adjust that approach so how and when you get the bookings can get it to a point where you're still making potentially more money,
Mhm.
but you're achieving that comfort level of having that 30 days at 90%. So it's not the last thing I recommend is to go out and just say, okay, let's make all these changes and see what happens. One of the ways that not one of the ways that we approach revenue management, Price Labs Wheelhouse have a lot of levers, right? A lot of settings. We layer it. What does this lever do? Okay, this will make this adjustment either close in or far out. What does this do? And so we're thinking of it as like layers of strategies that are on top of each other that then execute your overall strategy. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I want to get away from strategy for a second and talk more about TechTape. And I want you to share just maybe one or two client experiences with us of people who just got great results with using your services.
Yep. So I have a large portfolio client and a client with one unit. I'll start with the one unit client. So this client has a house in a C plus B minus neighborhood in New Jersey, and it's not the beach, it's not the shore. It's a town where a lot of people would roll up their windows as they're driving through, right? But
Sure.
it is a historic mansion. The owner, and it's about a $1 million value property between acquisition and renovations when he purchased it. 2021, he did revenue management, using Wheelhouse or Price Labs. I forget what it was. And he brought in $185,000 gross revenue, which is very, very respectable performance, right? January of 2022, I came on board. About 35% of the calendar was already booked by him. And for me, that's not a good thing, but that's a situation that we started with.
You'd probably like to start with a blank canvas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So 2022, we ended the year with $250,000 in gross booking revenue.
Wow.
And no updates or no renovations, right? It was literally the same exact property.
Wow. That's amazing. So almost 40% of the calendar was already booked. And with that remaining 60%, 65% really, you were able to get him roughly 25 to 30% more revenue than the year before. That's amazing.
And then he sold it to one of his buddies, right? And now his buddy has a much higher risk tolerance. And I'm continuing to manage the revenue for this property. 2023, we're on track for $300,000 in gross booking revenue.
Wow.
But he did do some, appliance replacements and whatnot. And he has a much more aggressive stance to try to maximize revenue, right? So this time there was some shift in the physical property and the risk profile that I keep mentioning, right? So it's not just me, we're calibrating to his risk profile. So that's the small property, one property. I have another client who has 42 properties. And fall of this past year, so 2022, things were really slow in his market, and his calendar was empty or very low. And so we started working together, and we got it up and running. And by January, everything was humming along. And then he said, "You know what? I think I got this." Right? And again, people can leave, no hard feelings, right? We don't lock people into like a long contract or anything. But what I did say, hey, why don't you leave, a handful of properties with me and take the rest?
It's good.
And, let's
compare.
Just compare.
Yeah.
Month and a half later, he emailed me, emergency, can you take everything back? Right. And what he was doing was he had a buddy who was a revenue manager, a hotel revenue manager. And, this buddy was essentially then seeing what I was doing and trying to mimic it. And I'd say he got some bookings that were higher ADR than the settings that I had. But as a whole, the calendar was, it was sitting empty.
Oh boy.
And so right now, we're still working together now. We've stabilized his portfolio of all properties. And now we get on routine calls talking about strategy, about, all right, what are we looking for over, the next month, 3 months, 6 months? And making sure the strategy is in alignment with what he needs out of his business.
Awesome. Do you do that with all of your clients or just ones with larger portfolios getting on strategy calls?
This is a very high touch service.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is not built as SaaS and for, no human being. There's a human being working on this.
Mm,
So, about once it doesn't have to be on a clock, but we do like to sit. We get better results if we're in alignment. So we want to
mhm.
get on a call with our clients and talk about strategy so that we're headed in the same direction.
Awesome. What else should people know about working with you, what the process is like? Is it just as simple as here's my portfolio and go start pricing, or is there anything else that they should know? And by the way, for those of you that are listening live, I did just drop the link in the comments. And for those of you that are listening on replay, you're going to find this on YouTube in the description and on the podcast in the podcast notes, so that you can go ahead and get a call set up and take that next step with John. So, John, what does that process look like?
It's fairly straightforward once we agree to work together. It's not just hey take over, but we do need to connect not only to your Price Labs or Wheelhouse account, but there is some back end connections that we need to make. So there's a bit of manual back and forth. Sometimes there's a 2FA, but we do need connection access to the OTAs and your PMS and things of that nature, so that we have a very solid connection. Um, it takes about 2 to 3 months for everything to start kicking in. So once we connect, we're not trying to disrupt your business. We want to
Sure.
transition from where you are to get you to the strategy that you want to go to. We don't charge for the bookings that are already booked before we connect. So oftentimes, folks that we start working with the first month, first 2 months, sometimes it's like we don't charge anything. So we don't have a
Mm,
setup fee, right? We want you to succeed, and we don't want to
yeah.
create barriers of entry for you to come on. Once a 2, 3 month process gets rolling, most of our clients start seeing either the highest ADR booking that they've gotten or higher occupancy or something that starts indicating that something is different. And then from that point on, I guess the best way to explain the experience is a lot of people get onto Price Labs or Wheelhouse to do like a set it and forget it.
Yeah.
Working with us, it's kind of like a set it and forget it, except there's someone there
Not forgetting about it.
always looking at it, but you
Yeah.
don't need to be focused on it all the time.
That's great. That's really good. So John, when people go to this link, they're just setting up a call to learn more and for you to give them a little bit more value on their portfolio and what the next steps would be.
Yes, because it's not SaaS, like I don't think we would ever be able to not understand who you are and what your portfolio is about for us to start getting started. We need to know a little bit about your portfolio.
Okay.
But Kyle, I don't know if you're going to mention it, but because we're good friends, we do have a discount code for the people who are watching this. And if you use that discount code when you're signing up, and it's Fearless 2023, and I think Kyle, you're going to place that.
Yep.
We do provide a 10% discount for life
That's great.
off of our service.
And that's John, just so I'm making sure, the link that you sent me with the Fearless 2023 in that link will automatically do that so they don't have to put it in themselves. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. But even if in our conversation you say, you found me through Kyle,
Yep.
it still works.
Okay, cool. They're going to sign up and then they're going to say it and they're going to get 10% discounts, right? No, I'm just messing.
You can provide the second 10%.
There you go. There you go. All right, guys. Well, I see Amanda just commented. She said she's already signed up for a call tomorrow. So that's awesome. So go make an appointment with John and just get your properties looked at, right? Like for me, I'm even sitting here being like, man, I think I do this pretty well, but I know John and his team do this much better than me. And so, shoot, John, you might be having me sign up as a client. Who knows?
I'll
So
say. book a call.
Yeah.
I'm fine. Like even even in the back of your mind, you're like, I'm not going to
Yeah.
sign up. I'm happy to have that first initial conversation just to learn about you, right? So,
I love it.
you know, like again, I'm not going to start pricing for you, but we can
Right.
have a conversation, and you could one call, pick my brain.
Awesome. John, if people are not ready to get a call booked, what are just some other ways that they can follow you or connect with you, maybe online?
So I'm very active on LinkedIn. That's my social media of choice.
Okay.
If you look up John on or TechTape, you'll find me. If you're trying to connect with me, just mention how you found me, because
Mm.
we're getting more and more just like spammy kind of connections, and so I just want to make sure that I connect with you.
All right. Awesome. John, you are the man, and especially the man of revenue management. Thank you so much for jumping on today and helping our audience to conquer the world of short-term rentals. All right, once again, guys, if you just want to follow John's content, go to his LinkedIn, or if you want to actually set up a call and it's zero pressure, it's free, you can go ahead and get that behind the scenes look at your business and what John can do to your revenue if you just click on the link down below in the YouTube description or in the podcast notes. That's going to do it for us here on the Fearless Investor Podcast. We're helping you to conquer the world of short-term rentals. See you next time.